Welcome home and welcome to the Black Establishment. I am Michelle, our Chief Communications Officer.
Tama TJ, Chief Operations Officer.
And my name is Chris. I am the Chief Marketing Officer.
Awesome. So now we're going to we've done some of these conversations. Hopefully you've been able to join us. As we think about the Black establishment, we want to take a deeper dive into this concept of entrepreneurship and community. So I would imagine that this conversation is going to be a little bit more personal. The first one was about introducing the brand. Then we had some conversation around who we are as an organization. And let's talk a little bit about community and entrepreneurship. So the first is, if you had to define entrepreneurship in your own word, right? That's a core part of what we're doing here at the Black Establishment. If you had to describe it in one or a few words, how would you conceptualize this idea of entrepreneurship? I'll go Chris.
I'll start. So a word that comes to mind for me is probably not the best word, but it's really like a dog. Like somebody who's just relentless, somebody who's gonna go the extra mile and like put in the work and the effort. Like everybody knows, entrepreneurship is about dedication and like it's not a 9 to 5. It's not normal business hours. Like you really have to have that want to do it and that passion to do it. So yeah, I think a dog is a great fitting word for it.
I love that. What about you, Tama, TJ?
Perseverance. I think perseverance simply like exemplifies by any means necessary. So you got to make it happen. I think, entrepreneur is one word, but like you see those memes where people be like, the photographer, the content creator, and it's the same person because that's truly what entrepreneurship is.
Yeah. I think for me, the one word that comes to mind when I think about entrepreneurship is freedom, right? Like growing up, I was just kind of taught that the ways to be free in this country for people that look like us is through education and entrepreneurship, right? The idea of being in control of your own enterprise to some extent. And we talked a little bit about this organization being for entrepreneurs and professionals, but there's still a way to have that entrepreneurial freedom within your professional life. So that's a core part of it for me. So with that in mind, like I guess I can get us started because I wanted to take us through a little bit of conversation around our examples of entrepreneurship growing up, right? And what that looked like and if it at all contributed to where we are today. Yeah. So for me, I had an uncle, and he was the uncle that was well-to-do in the family. He was an entrepreneur, right? He had a transportation company, and just sort of seeing the family go, and we would go and work on some Saturdays and work within the business, but just seeing what he was able to do with his family, and some of the ways that he could be, in some ways, stress-free, and other ways very stressed out from being an entrepreneur. But then like the other example is just me, right? I don't know if I could be an example of entrepreneurship for myself, but maybe seeing my uncle, I was a candy lady on some summers, right? Where I was sold little ices, and I realized, okay, people really like ices if I put bubble gum at the bottom. So those are 75 cents as opposed to 50 cents.
Right.
Then people was like, you got some chips? Don't you worry about it. I'll get some chips. So now I'm the candy lady, right? So just always having that entrepreneurial spirit. What about y'all?
Yeah, that's dope. For me, I just had like a neighbor. I didn't really have a lot of family in entrepreneurship. Just really hardworking people. But I had a friend of the family who his family collectively like built a business. They had a cleaning service. It was the mom, the dad, the siblings, the aunt, the uncle, and they allowed my brother and I to come in. So seeing their hard work and us gaining that work ethic from them, but also something that stood out to me that kind of shows up today is like they're not of black, their race. They're not black. And I feel like other cultures really come together and do that. And I feel like that's kind of what we're building is like family. Like, as a family, we can collectively like build and be successful together. So that's kind of like what I took from it. And it was really inspirational to see, a family come together and run a successful business together and not fight over like the financials. And, it doesn't always have to be like that. Right. So yeah, that was pretty dope.
What about you, Tama?
I think fortunately both of my parents were entrepreneurs. I got to see a successful version and a freedom version. My mom worked for a corporation for a while. She found people with disabilities jobs, advocated for them, trained them on the job, but she was always gone. So my after school program in elementary school was Atlanta Bread Company. So if you all Atlanta, you remember Atlanta Bread Company. That was before Panera. So I used to leave school and walk about 2 miles to the Atlanta Bread Company because that's where my cousin worked, and I would sit there and wait for my mom to get off to pick us up. And that's when she was working for a corporation. And one day I'm leaving school and she met me in the church parking lot. So the school's here, the church parking lot right there. And I'm like, what you doing here? And I like cried because she was never there after school. And she told me she quit and she was gonna open her own business. So she opened her own business, Shelton ENT, where she found clients with disabilities jobs, advocated for them, trained them. So I used to do her books. I helped write reports, all of that. So I got to see like from start to like finish. And I got to see the highs where we went from living in an apartment. My mom and I used to share a room. I was in middle school sharing a room with my mom because we lived with somebody else. We went from that to she bought a house. So I had not only my own room, I had a floor. I was downstairs. So I got to see the difference. But I also got to see like working for the city or the state, you don't get paid all the time. Right. So it be sometimes we rolling in the dough. I got all the shoes. I can go in line Saturday at 10 o'clock, stand in the mall. And then it's sometimes for months, we not getting a check. So from like July sometimes to September, December, so I'm like, okay. So then she had to be more strategic about savings. My dad, he is anti all things white, you know. God rest his soul. He's black through and through. So he wasn't doing anything that was going to be attached to the man. So he had a pizza shop. He had a bookstore. He made incense. Anything you see on the west side of Atlanta, he probably had a hand in it somewhere. But that was his own entrepreneurship. That was his own version of freedom. So I got to see that from both sides of what, you know, how his version of success versus my mom's version of success. And to me, it just kind of melded together. Like, you can really be who you want to be. You just have to be intentional about it.
Right. And have that kind of dog mindset to be able to ride the waves. I think there's a lot that we can learn about entrepreneurship and the model that we're trying to build, sometimes from other cultures, right? Like if we look at how the Jewish culture, you know, how they support and have their own, you know, line of businesses, right? Where it's embedded. And I think Black folks have always been trying to do that in some ways. And now we're taking our run at it, right? So with that in mind, there was an article that I just pulled a little quote from, and I wanted to get y'all's thought about it. So it says, the Village Market Atlanta, Black-owned businesses in Atlanta have a lifespan of 0 to 3 years and only have yearly earnings of about $58,000, which is 11 times less than that of white businesses. Bloomberg reports that 8 out of 10 Black businesses fail within the first 18 months. Why do you think this is? What do you think is contributing to this statistic?
So in other episodes, I've mentioned like our systemic, you know, things that we have to face as Black people. So I think that has a lot to do with it. I think, you know, as far as capital and funding and, you know, us receiving higher interest rates, and it's harder for us to get loans, and we really can't, you know, really maximize and grow our businesses that way. So I think that really is contributing to it. But I think, you know, as of now, we're speaking up about it. You know, we're changing the narrative. You know, we're being a resource to each other. You know, there are Black people who are open capital firms and things who are pouring back into their community. So I think that's important. And I think that, you know, just all has contributed to it this far.
Yeah, and I just think the systemic issues can't be understated, right? Like when I think about, I'm not sure if y'all are aware of like the Fearless Fund and what just happened with them. So the Fearless Fund was a allocated funding base for Black entrepreneurs, right? I think they were being intentional about even serving Black women. And then they were hit with a lawsuit, right? That made it as far as up to our highest courts, where basically they were sued for being discriminatory because they were only prioritizing Black-owned businesses, right? And so the idea is that they lost that lawsuit. So that changes the landscape about what people can do with their funding. But that was all an effort, to your point, Chris, of correcting historical wrongs, acknowledging that we don't get access to the same loans. And so I think sometimes people will hear systemic issues and think, oh, you know, playing a victim. But those are tangible facts that are impacting Black businesses today. Tammy, what do you have to add to that? What do you think is contributing?
I mean, I think a lot of white people get businesses passed to them.
Right.
Like, I went to school with a lot of white kids, a lot of white people, and I know they had the option to do what they wanted to do, which was be a vet, be a dentist, or you take on this family business.
Right.
And some of them decided to take the family business. Some decided to go and be a vet and do the family business. But I know our parents didn't pass us no businesses, and not because they didn't want to. My mom had her business, and then she decided to kind of do more of the therapeutic route. But I just think when we start off, we start off at a deficit.
Yeah.
And not all Black people. I think, for the majority of us, what we were passed down is hard work. You work hard, you work at this job. I know our parents used to cringe when we would leave jobs because you stayed in them jobs for 20, 30 years,
Right.
and you get your pension and you live your life.
Right.
And I'd be like, shit, I could leave this job in 2 years and go make over there and do what I do. But like, I think in that case, I had to learn to shift hard work to working smarter and working this way. Like I had to all my jobs, most of them, and I think yours too, have come from like people you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely. So what will or what do we hope the Black establishment will do to help to correct those things? I think one thing for sure is providing access to folks who can tap you into some resources, right? So if we have someone like Tama who can help you to draft a business plan or to streamline some of your services so that you're more appealing to a bank so they understand that you have the flow that you need to make these things happen, or if it's just access to subject matter experts, right, that can plug you in and to help you avoid some of the common pitfalls. I think that's the biggest part of it. We did talk about a part of our business being aimed at giving back to Black-owned businesses, right? So as we're doing fundraisers and as we're generating revenue, a part of that being, contributing, giving back to some of our organizations and some of the businesses within our infrastructure that we can support. Y'all have anything else to add to that? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about community then, right? Again, that's another core part of who we are. The idea is that community is embedded into the mission, vision, and just all of our intentional work behind this organization. So as we're thinking about it, as you think about the term community, is it a physical space? Is it a spiritual thing? How would you define community, and what does that mean to this organization?
my answer is D, all of the above. I think it's community. I think it's physical. I think it's spiritual. I think it's a state of mind. I think it's a state of being. I think community doesn't look the same because the way I commune with you might not be the same way I commune with you. So I think it's diverse, but yeah.
Yeah. So anything to add to that, Chris?
I mean, Tamer really summed it up. I mean, I can just second that. I feel like community is just shared values and people who you intentionally, vibe with organically. And I think that plays a lot of in community and building the people around you and people who want to see you win, people who, don't mind. I got this opportunity. I'm gonna leave the door open for you. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like that's community.
Absolutely. And I think just to add to that, community is protection too.
Oh,
Right? So like the idea.
protection. Like that.
Thank you. I feel good about that.
Okay.
But it's the idea
And
of
celebration.
exactly. I appreciate that too. It's the idea of being, protective of what we're building, of the people that are a part of our network, and really kind of enclosing ourselves in around each other in a way to protect ourselves from those systemic issues, right? And issues that can negatively impact us. Do y'all think that people actually want community though? Like, because you see a lot of people like I would say in our generation, right? I think we're called geriatric millennials. I might be a little bit older, y'all, but we're millennials. I might be on a geriatric end. But I see a lot of people have this mindset of I'm going for mines, right? Like, and I'm building my own and y'all worry about that, right? I think a lot of people get whatever means, they achieve whatever. And I see some people withdraw from this idea of community. What do y'all think? Do y'all think there's a need or a want, a desire for community these days?
I think people have been jaded by faux or fake community. I think people still aspire and yearn for intentional community. We all are from and live in Atlanta. And I know that we all know and can tangibly feel and see the difference between old Atlanta and current Atlanta.
Yeah.
And current Atlanta is full of a lot of fake ass community and like, oh, I'm really doing this on Instagram. And I ain't really doing shit when I'm not.
Right.
And we can go back to a couple years ago when Bow Wow, who's a celebrity who has money to be intentional and to be real, took that picture when he on a private jet.
And we all had the Bow Wow challenge.
And we had the Bow Wow challenge. And I think that's like the epitome of like what Atlanta has become. And there's still pockets of like authenticity and that Southern hospitality and that warmth and that love and that feel. And for me, that's what I want.
Yeah.
That's what I want my city
Trying to get back to that.
I want my city to get back to Killer Mike, David Banner, you know, those times. Yeah.
Well, I just think when I see people, I get so disappointed when I see people sort of push away from community, especially people that look like us, because, you know, Tama told y'all in the first video, I'm blackity black, black, black. And I recognize that rugged individualization is just a facet of white supremacy, right? It's a white supremacist ideology to say, I'm going to get mine. I'm all about self, rugged individualization. And I think that's always been antithetical to Black folks, to Black community. But I think in terms of how we've had to situate ourselves in this country, a lot of people have bought into that idea where after I finish school, I'm going to start a family and I'm going to do this and leave behind the concept of other folks. But if we were really hearkening back to who we are, it's always been Sankofa. It's always reach back to pull up. It's always been know your history so we can move forward together. And so I think, like Tama said, we're trying to get back to that. And we're starting off here in Atlanta. And, you know, if things go the way we want them to go, it's going to spread out. Right?
Yeah, I mean, y'all really hit every point. I mean, there's really nothing else to add. I mean, I just really think people are seeking a community like we're building. I think people are just silenced a little bit, afraid to speak up, but I think we're creating that safe space for people to say, you know what, I need somebody to hold me accountable. Like, I have these goals, I have these things I want to achieve, but like how? Who? You know what I'm saying? I think we're just gonna, you know, bridge that gap and help people, you know, fulfill their dreams and really make a legacy for themselves.
Gotcha. And the last question I have for us in this conversation is, how will we know when we've achieved that community feel? When something that we're talking about being the core of our organization, how will we know when it has been achieved? You know, for me, I think we'll know that when we see more people in our organization starting businesses, right? Asking questions, being able to come and say, I really have this idea, but I don't know what to do next, right? Being comfortable enough. Again, we're talking about building that home space, feeling comfortable enough to say, help me figure this out. We'll see that our network, whatever directory we have, will be people's go-to when they're looking for a service. I'm looking for somebody to do balloons for my niece's party, or I'm looking for someone to bake a cake, or I need a DJ, or I need someone to help me, you know, with my logo design. The first place they look is within our organization. To me, that's how I'll know that we are being successful in our efforts. What about you?
Yeah, I think similarly. I think it's a feeling. I think it's a sense of pride that like we have built something for our people and our people feel a part of that. You start jobs, they give you stocks and equity sometimes in the company to give you some sense of like, oh, you own this company. I don't think you really feel like you own a part of that company. You're just ready to cash them stocks out and let them vest or whatever the case may be. I think in this case, it's more tangible where you really feel a part of something and you've been able to elevate yourself, your brand, your processes will be more succinct. Your customers or C-stat, customer satisfaction rate has increased. And it's the feedback that we'll receive from what we've created. You know, being able to see yourself excel and succeed in ways that you didn't imagine with people that look like you and value the same things. Round us out.
Man, y'all really touched every point that I would have even thought of, but I mean, the feeling of like pride and empowerment, I think is better than anything. Like, I feel like this community that we're building is really, you know, also helping people with their well-being and their, you know, mindsets of themselves. So I feel like just having a healthy community where people just, can lean on each other is how we'll see it, and people being prideful to be a part of the Black establishment, wearing our be with pride,
Right.
seeing our brand,
Right.
on the forefront of things. So, yeah, I'm excited.
All right. So, as we talked about community, we invite you to join the community. If you're watching the video, you're already, tipping your toe into the community. So we invite you to come on over. Make sure you follow us on socials. Make sure you check out our website. And as always, we invite you to be exclusive.
Excellent.
Elevated.
Thank you for tuning in.
Peace out.